A man stands on the eastern shore of a sea that has just swallowed an empire. Salt water, still drying on his sandals. At the physical layout of the oldest manuscripts we have, you start to see a pattern that most modern translations completely obscure. He shatters the arrogant and exalts the forgotten. To the ancient ear, the song of a woman in these moments is a highly disruptive force. It is the sound of the world being turned upside down. It is the frequency of divine reversal. Deborah sung over a dead army. Hannah sang over a living child. They both sang on the other side of the miracle. But the true test of this technology does not happen in the daylight of victory. The ultimate power of the shir is only revealed when the miracle has not yet happened. You have to travel hundreds of years forward into the absolute pitch black of the Roman Empire to hear what the frequency does when it is locked in a cage. A Roman guard fastens the heavy wooden stocks. The inner cell of the Philippian prison is completely lightless, freezing cold, and smells faintly of sewage and damp earth. Paul and Silas sit on the hard stone, their backs laid open and bleeding from the Roman whips, their ankles locked in iron. It is midnight, the hour when human terror is usually at its absolute highest. They do not have an army coming to rescue them. They do not have a legal defense prepared. And they do not have a logical reason to hope. But they have a frequency. They begin to sing. The songs embedded in the biblical narrative are not musical interludes. They are load-bearing walls. They appear at the exact moments when prose reaches its absolute limit. You might never find yourself locked in a literal first-century dungeon. But you almost certainly know what that midnight feels like. You know what it is like to sit in the darkness of a medical diagnosis that offers no hope, or a sudden financial collapse, or a relational fracture that leaves you breathless. In those moments, your natural human instinct is to frantically search for an exit. You want to logically explain to yourself how you will survive the morning. You want to argue with the darkness until it makes sense, but logic cannot penetrate a midnight that deep. If you are in a season where your circumstances have completely stripped you of control, the hardest thing in the world to do is to lift your voice. It feels absurd. It feels like a profound denial of reality, to sing a hymn while your life is actively falling apart. But the biblical pattern is demanding that you redefine what reality actually is. Your pain is real, but it is not sovereign. When you force your lungs to push air out in a rhythm of praise, while your chest is tight with grief, you are disrupting the enemy's primary strategy. Despair requires profound silence to do its best work. It needs you isolated, quiet, and consumed by the immediate trauma in front of you. Worship shatters that silence. When human language shatters under the weight of the divine, or the terror of the moment, or the sheer, incomprehensible scale of a deliverance, when you open your mouth and sing in the middle of your own prison cell, you are not simply trying to manufacture positive emotions. You are taking the sheer, that ancient cognitive tether that binds your mind to the proven character of God, and you are pulling on it. With everything you have, you are declaring that your present suffering, no matter how severe, does not have the final authority over your future. The music is not a psychological escape from the chains. It is an assault on the room itself. In the book of Acts, the text notes that the other prisoners were listening, and then a violent earthquake shakes the foundations of the facility. The doors fly open, and the chains fall off. The frequency of their worship literally altered the physical structure of their captivity. And when you choose to sing in your darkest hour, you are introducing a frequency into your life that darkness simply cannot tolerate. You are shifting the atmosphere of your own mind, moving from a victim of circumstance to an active participant in your deliverance. But this technology is not just meant for survival in the dark. It is meant to bring something entirely new into the world. Decades before that, Roman prison. Another song was being composed in the hill country of Judea, and it would alter human history forever. You are reading along in standard narrative format. He traveled here. She said this. The army camped there, and suddenly, the text violently shifts. She climbs the steep, rocky path into the hill country of Judea. The air grows thin. Her sandals are caked with white dust. She is maybe 15 years old. She carries a secret that sounds like a lie. She carries a pregnancy that violates the law. She carries a scandal that usually ends with heavy. Jagged stones, breaking bone. The village is whispering. Her fiancé is quietly making arrangements to leave her. Her entire social world is collapsing. She reaches the house of Zechariah. She pushes the heavy wooden door open. She calls out to her cousin, Elizabeth. The older woman hears the greeting. The child in her own womb kicks violently. Elizabeth shouts a blessing that rings off the stone walls, and the teenager does not collapse in tears. She does not frantically explain herself. She does not beg for sanctuary. She breaks into song. My soul glorifies the Lord. This is the Magnificat. It is the longest continuous set of words spoken by a woman in the New Testament, and it is terrifying in its power. Read the lyrics. She sings about rulers being violently pulled down from their iron thrones. She sings about the wealthy being sent away with empty hands. She sings about the starving being fed. The rhythm changes. The vocabulary becomes ancient, dense, and strange. It is as if the author realizes that simply describing the event is no longer enough. She is pulling the combat frequency of Hannah and Deborah straight out of the ancient dust and unleashing it into the first century. She weaves the words of the prophets together. She quotes the Psalms. She takes the collective memory of an occupied nation and aims it like a spear at the empire. The Magnificat is not a polite lullaby. It is a political earthquake. She is a poor, unmarried girl from a backwater town. Standing at the exact moment the Old Testament crashes into the New, the silence of 400 years is finally broken. The prophets are dead. The throne of David is empty. Roman eagles cast long, dark shadows over the temple in Jerusalem. But the girl sings. The song forces the listener to see a reality that the physical world denies. The Romans are still in power. The religious elite are still firmly in charge. The wood of the cross is still waiting to be cut. But the rhythm of her song treats the victory of God as a completed fact. This is the ultimate function of the music. It pulls a guaranteed future into a fragile present. Mary sings. And the timeline pivots. But her song is not the end of the music. Because 60 years later, the last surviving apostle will find himself. The event must be sung. Prose tells you the facts of what happened. Song tells you the frequency of what it meant. And the question is why? Exiled on a rock in the Aegean Sea, and the sky itself will break open to reveal the final frequency. The echo of Mary's song ripples outward across the first century. But the ultimate destination of this frequency is not found in the past. It is waiting at the end of the world. Read the text of Revelation chapter 5. The Apostle John is exiled on the jagged volcanic rock of Patmos, the salt spray of the Aegean Sea stinging his face. He is granted a vision of the cosmic throne room, and he sees a scroll, sealed with 7 heavy wax seals. He begins to weep bitterly because no one in the universe is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll. Then, a figure steps forward, a lamb, looking as though it had been violently slaughtered. The lamb takes the scroll, and the response is not a legal decree. The elders fall down. They hold golden bowls full of burning incense, and they sing. The English translation says, and they sang a new song. But the word John uses for song here is the Greek noun ode. It is the root of the English word ode, and it refers to a lyrical poem, a vocal chant of epic proportions. But the real weight of the word comes from its history. When ancient Jewish scholars translated the Old Testament into Greek, they used this exact word. Why did the biblical authors, people meticulously documenting the survival of their nation, continually hit the brakes on the historical narrative to inject lyrical poetry? Ode. To translate the Hebrew word shur. The Greek ode is the direct linguistic descendant of the cognitive tether Moses forged at the Red Sea. It is the exact same technology, carried across centuries, translated across empires, and brought straight into the throne room of heaven. But John attaches a crucial adjective. He calls it a kaine ode, a new song. In the biblical imagination, a new song is never just a fresh melody or a different arrangement of notes. A new song is the mandatory theological response to a cosmic shift in reality. You cannot sing an old song when the world has been fundamentally remade. You see this pattern constantly in the Psalms, where the command to sing a new song always follows a massive, unprecedented act of salvation. The old song, the Song of Moses, was sung because a nation was delivered from the mud of Egypt. But this new song is sung because humanity has been ransomed from the grip of death itself. This new ode is not a closing credit sequence to human history. It is the coronation protocol of a new universe. They sing that the Lamb is worthy to take the scroll because his blood purchased people from every tribe, language, people, and nation. The music does not just celebrate the victory. The music enforces it. It is the final, unbreakable chain linking the restored creation back to the Creator. It happens again and again. Moses, Miriam, Deborah, Hannah, David, Mary, Simeon, Paul, John. They are not taking a creative break. They are doing something highly specific, the ultimate shear that proves the darkness did not win. The scribes were right to leave the parchment blank when the songs began, because human prose simply cannot carry the weight of this kind of glory. But the most remarkable thing about this architecture of song is not just that it exists in the ancient texts or the apocalyptic future. The true power of this pattern is what it demands of you right now. A prophet stood at the edge of a severed sea and forged a cognitive tether for a wandering nation. A scribe left intentional blank space on a heavy animal skin and forced generations to breathe in the middle of the text. A judge looked over a valley of sunken iron chariots and sang the destruction of an untouchable empire. A barren woman knelt in the dusty courtyard of Shiloh and sang the social hierarchies of the world into ruin. A missionary sat bleeding in a pitch-black Roman cell and sang the physical foundations of a prison into rubble. A teenager carried a scandalous pregnancy into the Judean hill country and sang the political timeline of history into a new era. An exiled apostle wept on a jagged volcanic rock and heard the final chord of a restored universe. One thread, one frequency, one song. They are tapping into a technology of memory that goes far deeper than simply recording facts. They are leaving a frequency behind for the next generation to find. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the missing ink. The Qumran scribe pulling the carbon black reed pen away from the parchment, leaving deliberate, physical gaps of blank space in the shape of half bricks over whole bricks. The visual shock on the page proving that, when human language is pushed past its breaking point, the historical facts are no longer enough to save you. If you are in a season where the prose of your life has become a relentless drumbeat of grief, where the medical diagnosis makes no sense, and the logic of survival has completely failed you, logic is not what you need. You need the sure. It feels completely absurd to force your lungs to push air out in a rhythm of praise when your chest is tight with panic. Worship is not a denial of your reality. It is the tether to a higher one. If this revealed something new for you, subscribe and leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is sitting in their own midnight and needs a reason to lift their voice. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. And may the God who has never once left his people in the dark without a melody walk with you through your silence and bring you out carrying a new song on the other side of the water. But to really see how disruptive these songs are, you cannot just read the English words in a modern paperback. A judge stands over the wreckage of a Canaanite army. The valley mud, still wet, with the ruin of 900 iron chariots. You have to step back into the ancient world. You have to look at the physical ink. Picture a scribe in the scriptorium at Qumran, 2,000 years ago. The desert wind blows fine red dust over the limestone tables. He dips a reed pen into carbon black ink, carefully copying the book of Exodus onto a long, heavy sheet of animal skin. He is writing standard, dense blocks of Hebrew prose, packing the consonants together in an unbroken wall of text. But then he reaches the shore of the Red Sea, and his entire physical process changes. If you look at the oldest surviving Torah scrolls, or the fragments pulled from the Dead Sea caves, you will see something remarkable. When the narrative hits a song, the dense block of text suddenly breaks apart. The scribe begins spacing the words out in a highly specific, interlocking pattern that the rabbis later called half brick over whole brick. It looks exactly like masonry. Instead of a solid wall of ink, the text is arranged in alternating columns with wide, deliberate gaps of blank parchment left in the middle of the line. The visual shock is immediate. It is as if the sea itself has parted on the page, leaving dry land. A teenager sits in the hill country of Judea, carrying a pregnancy that by all cultural logic should end with her being stoned to death by her neighbors. In the center of the ink, the ancient reader did not need musical notes to know that the frequency had shifted. The physical page itself was giving a visual command. Modern translations almost entirely erase this experience. We take these ancient, interlocking poetic structures and compress them into block quotes or tiny italicized stanzas, squeezing them to fit our double-column paperbacks. We treat the visual layout as secondary, a mere formatting preference for poetry. But in the ancient world, parchment was incredibly expensive. To leave wide, intentional blank spaces on an animal skin was a massive expenditure of resources. According to the Talmud, every Torah scroll in the world must format the Song of the Sea in this exact interlocking pattern. If a scribe writes it as normal prose, the entire scroll is considered invalid. Unkosher. It cannot be used in the synagogue. Think about the weight of that strictness. The historical accuracy of the words is not enough. The physical shape of the song must be preserved, because the song itself is the monument. The blank space is not empty parchment. It is the breath you are supposed to take. The scribes were visually enforcing a pause, demanding that the reader stop simply consuming information and begin feeling the weight of the deliverance. Prose is designed to convey data as efficiently as possible, pushing the eye forward. A missionary sits in the pitch black of a Philippian prison cell at midnight, his back shredded by Roman whips, his ankles locked in heavy wooden stocks, to find out what happens next. Song is designed to force you to linger. These interlocking bricks of text were the foundational architecture of Israel's collective memory. They understood that you might forget the specific chronological details of a historical event, but you will never forget a rhythm that is tied to your survival. When the human mind is pushed past the limits of ordinary experience, ordinary language fractures, and out of that fracture, rhythm emerges. But to understand how this technology of memory actually works, you have to look at the first time it happens. You have to stand on the edge of the water. They run. The ground is still damp. Salt stings their eyes. The wind howls in a deafening eastern gale. Behind them is the sound of wood splintering, the scream of Egyptian horses, the clash of iron and bronze sinking into the mud. The greatest military superpower on Earth is drowning. Their chariot wheels snapping, their heavy armor pulling them into the dark water. In front of them, the shore, safe ground. Moses reaches the eastern bank. 2 million people scramble up the rocks, their lungs burning. Moses stretches out his hand. The water collapses. The towering walls of the sea crash down, sealing the grave of their slave masters under a massive rush of white foam. Silence falls. The roaring wind stops, and in each of these moments, something strange happens. They do not write a theological treatise. They do not draft a historical record. There is only the sound of waves hitting the sand, and the sight of dead soldiers washing up on the shore. This is the moment. For 14 chapters in the book of Exodus, the text has been a relentless drumbeat of prose. A bush burns. A staff turns into a snake. The river bleeds. Frogs cover the earth. Hail shatters the trees. Darkness falls so thick you can feel it on your skin. Blood is painted on doorposts. The narrative moves like a locomotive, carrying the reader through the sheer terror and speed of the escape. Prose is doing its job, reporting the facts, moving the plot forward, documenting the Exodus. But here, on the other side of the water, prose fails. Moses does not stop to reflect. He does not write an essay on divine justice. He does not compile a list of Egyptian casualties. He opens his mouth. Miriam grabs a tambourine. The prose shatters into poetry. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver, he is hurled into the sea. This is Exodus 15, the Song of the Sea. It is the very first time the text of Scripture breaks into music, and it sets the precedent for every song that will follow for the next 1,000 years of biblical history. They sing about the right hand of God, shattering the enemy. They sing about the depths covering the chariots like a heavy stone. They sing about the surrounding nations Philistia, Edom, Moab, melting away in terror before they have even arrived. They do not pause to logically process the trauma or the triumph. They open their mouths, and they break into song. The sentences are short. The verbs are violent. The rhythm is relentless. The song is not an emotional reaction. It is a theological boundary. It is a flag planted in the sand, declaring who actually controls the world. Pharaoh thought he was a god. The water proved he was just a man. The music locks that truth into the muscle memory of an entire nation. They will carry this song into the absolute desolation of the desert. They will teach it to their children in the tents. They will sing it when they are hungry, when they are attacked, and when they inevitably begin to forget who they are. But there is a detail hiding in the very first line of this song. A single Hebrew word that explains exactly what this music is meant to do. And it is a word that changes everything you thought you knew about worship. Exodus chapter 15. Verse 1. The sea is still churning behind them. The adrenaline is still coursing through their veins. And the English translation simply says, Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. The word translated as song here is the Hebrew noun shir. It is a word that will echo through the rest of the Old Testament. But its etymological roots hold a secret. Many scholars point out that the underlying concept of shir carries the physical imagery of arranging, linking, or chaining things together in a sequence. Most people read the biblical text primarily as a book of prose. We assume it is a collection of ancient histories, legal codes, and letters. It shares linguistic connective tissue with ancient words for a ring, a bracelet, or a continuous line. To the ancient ear, singing was not simply pushing breath over vocal cords to make a pleasant melody. It was the act of forging an auditory chain. You feel a shear in the physical vibration of your own chest. It is an embodied memory, linking the fragile, terrifying present moment to the solid rock of the past. If feeling the actual weight of these ancient words is changing how you read the text, you are exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the Israelites begin to link their history together. You see this exact word, shir, surface at the most volatile transitions in Israel's history. When David drags the heavy wooden Ark of the Covenant up the dusty road into Jerusalem, surrounded by shouting crowds, he commands the Levites to lift up a shir. When Solomon finally finishes the massive, cedar-lined stone temple, he writes the Shir Hashirim, the Song of Songs. The music is never accidental. They are actively binding the nation's fragile memory to the proven faithfulness of God. That linguistic root changes everything about how you read these poetic breaks in the Bible. We tend to view church music as an emotional warm-up, a stylistic preference, with a dedicated poetry section called the Psalms tucked neatly in the middle. We treat the songs like a separate category, or a transition between sermon points. But to the ancient Hebrew mind, shir was a primary survival tool. Worship is not a musical interlude. It is a cognitive tether. When your environment inevitably turns into a barren wasteland, and the water runs out, and the bread stops falling, the song is the rope that keeps your mind anchored to the miracle you witnessed at the sea. It prevents the trauma of the present from erasing the deliverance of the past. That echo does not stop at the water, because hundreds of years later, two women will face a different kind of darkness, and they will forge a chain of their own. The storm breaks over the valley of Megiddo. Rain turns the dry, cracked riverbed of the Kishon into a raging torrent. 900 Canaanite iron chariots, the ancient equivalent of an unstoppable mechanized tank division, sink up to their axles in thick, heavy mud. The Canaanite general abandons his chariot and flees on foot. The brutal oppression of 20 years is broken in a single, chaotic afternoon. Deborah does not write a military dispatch. She opens her mouth. She sings, "Hear this. You, kings, listen. You rulers. I, even I, will sing to the Lord." Generations later, the battleground shifts. It is not a valley of mud, but the dusty courtyard of the tabernacle at Shiloh, a hymn book divorced from the raw grit of the historical narrative. But if you look closer at the original Hebrew, at the narrative pacing, the air is thick with the smell of roasted meat and burning fat. A woman kneels in the dirt, her mouth moving silently, her jaw tight, her tears leaving dark drops in the dust. She has no army. She has no weapon. She has an empty womb, and a rival wife who verbally tortures her every single day. God opens her womb. She gives birth to Samuel. She does not simply whisper a prayer of thanks. She opens her mouth. She sings. The bows of the warriors are broken, but those who stumbled are armed with strength. These two women are separated by centuries, but they are deploying the exact same technology. The mud swallows the iron. A song is forged. The dust catches the tears. A song is forged. The barren woman speaks of broken bows. The judge speaks of shattered heads. When you read these songs back to back, a startling pattern emerges. They are taking the shear, the cognitive tether, Moses used at the sea and turning it into a weapon. They are looking at the political and social hierarchies of their world, the powers that seem entirely untouchable, and they are dismantling them with rhythm. The lyrics they leave behind are not expressions of polite gratitude. They are instruments of regime change. They sing that the Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and raises up.